this may be the most important opening statement I've ever made on this program, or maybe any other program. Why? Well, we have to come to terms with something. The Constitution exists to protect us from two things: an overly powerful ruling class and an out-of-control mob. We're not a pure democracy. We don't have a parliament. And on the other hand, we don't have a centralized government, or not supposed to, that can rule with an iron fist. And so when people talk about democracy, they completely misstate the purpose of our government. Our government is intended to protect the individual and individual liberties. You know of any other country that has a Bill of Rights? I don't know of any other country that does. Individualism is key. The Declaration of Independence talks about unalienable rights for every single human being, natural rights, and the authority comes from God, not from government. Well, we have a serious, serious problem in this country. The Constitution has been breached constantly. In many respects, we live in a post-constitutional America. And let me explain what I mean. At every turn in our society now, promoted by the media and academia, and certainly the politicians themselves, the goal is to empower the ruling class. They'll use their mob, they'll abuse the middle class, but the goal is to empower the ruling class. And we have a ruling class that is narcissistic, that is incompetent, and in many respects, anti-American. And we've seen failure upon failure for which they take absolutely no responsibility. And as a matter of fact, when they fail, they blame you, the American people. When they fail, they blame other people, institutions, our history. They do whatever they can to deflect. Why? Because the answer to their failure is always more power for them and less freedom for you. Look at this slaughter that just took place in Texas. Gun control, red flag laws. Joe Biden gives a speech. Man's been in government his entire life. Senator, 36 years, vice president, 8 years. Now he's president of the United States. Keeps saying, we need to do this, we need to do that. For God's sakes, enough is enough. And what is the answer? To steal more and more liberty from the individual, to pretend the Bill of Rights don't exist. They're flexible, they're pliable, they're whatever the ruling class wants it to be. Last month, the issue was the First Amendment. Remember that? Oh, you know, freedom isn't really totally free, and free speech isn't absolute, and the Second Amendment's not absolute. But what is absolute? The growing power of the central government and the ruling class, the incompetent, narcissistic, and in many respects, anti-American ruling class. Look at the slaughter in Buffalo. Again, a failing of the ruling class. That mass murderer, who was a white supremacist, he was all over social media. He wasn't hiding who he was or what he wanted to do. He wasn't caught. And the hospital lets him out in 36 hours. They have some of the strictest gun control laws in New York and a red flag law in New York. The idea that more laws would have stopped him. If we don't have a ruling class, whether they're running our hospitals or whether they're running our internet services and our social platforms, or whether they're running a police department, or whether they're running a country that is not competent, that is not focused, that is not looking for ways to grab more power rather than to effectively exercise and manage the power that they have, well, more laws are not going to matter in terms of capturing the bad guys. The same ruling elite that praised the 2020 riots, the same ruling elite that was painting Black Lives Matter signs in the streets, a Marxist organization, a corrupt organization, a racist, anti-Semitic organization, the same ruling elite that was defunding police departments, slashing their budgets, trashing their own cops, lying about their racism and so forth. That ruling elite, we're going to rely on them to have more power? Ladies and gentlemen, there's not a damn law they can pass in this country that's going to stop these shooters when we have people who are responsible for enforcing these laws who don't do it. There's something terribly wrong. This ruling class, whether it is protecting society with the murder rate going through the roof or anything else, is the worst so-called ruling class you can possibly imagine, and yet they want more power. They're the ones who've caused inflation with the mindless, historically unparalleled spending and debt and deficits and the borrowing. They created inflation. They've destroyed the supply chain, not the virus, because of the union rules that are on the West Coast, because of the environmental rules that are on the West Coast. There's only one port operating 24/7, one out of 7 at Long Beach. One. Why? Because of what I just said. Gas prices. Joe Biden, first day in office, signs an executive order that chokes the energy industry. Now the price is going through the roof. We went from energy independence to energy dependence. He's really happy with himself. He cut a deal with Saudi Arabia. He's working on Venezuela now to send us all. It's like we're back in the 1970s. We've made no progress. Look at immigration. The borders are wide open. I mean, if people can come across the border illegally and hundreds of thousands of them undetected, well, what stops guns from coming across the border illegally? Once they put in place their rules against the average citizen in this country, what stops guns? Have we stopped fentanyl from coming across the border? Again, it is a failure, in some cases intentional, in some cases incompetent, of the ruling class. And now they're meeting in Washington. We're going to have some kind of bipartisan law. We're going to have a checklist of all the things they need to pass, as if that would have fixed what took place in Texas. A failure of the leadership of the police department, or I should say the school district police, to act, as if that would have fixed what took place in Buffalo. They had their red flag law there. They had their gun control law there. But they didn't take care of business. They learned in Parkland. They learned in Florida. That doesn't mean they're going to have a perfect record. There'll never be a perfect record. And as for the media, if you expect to get facts and truth and useful information, thoughtful discussion from the media, you are absolutely out of your mind. They are pushing the agenda, too. A free society cannot remain free for long when the media throws in with the ruling class and becomes part of the mouthpiece for the ruling class and pushes their propaganda.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to LevinTV.com and subscribe now.